What's up guys, how's it going? Welcome to another video here on the channel. Today, we're going to talk about Yurika Masuno's case. So if you haven't subscribed yet, please do, and don't forget to turn on notifications. Now, without further ado, let's go to the video. Yurika Masuno was a college student at the Sacred Heart University in Tokyo, the capital of Japan. She was 20 years old at the time of the facts and was the daughter of Yurika Masuno, a programmer and composer famous all over the world for having been one of the main responsible for the construction of the Nintendo console. Hiroyuki started his career in the video game industry in 1985, working at a famous Japanese company called Kemco, where he wrote sound effects and music for all the games he developed. Over time, his work became so appreciated that he was asked to compose soundtracks for pop culture products in general in the country. Around the same time that he became Yurika's father, Hiroyuki reached the peak of his career, being appointed CEO of a large information technology company. Despite all her father's success, Yurika, unlike other young people who usually follow in the family footsteps, wanted to walk her own path. The young woman had the dream of becoming a flight attendant. She loved to travel and really wanted to experience new places and cultures. The young woman had already traveled to the famous city of Vienna, Austria, where she spent a few days enjoying the place. She said that the trips helped her to combat her anxiety, a problem that Yurika suffered from. As a sophomore in college, Yurika decided to become a member of the AIESCC, a student-led, non-profit student organization based in the Netherlands, with branches in all over 126 countries, including Japan. The organization is recognized as the largest in the world in this regard, with a regional exchange network between countries. With an internship at NPO, the Japanese branch of the organization, Yurika managed to enter the organization exchange program and won the opportunity to go to Romania and teach Japanese in a language teaching program that the country called Language School. At the time, the organization declared that it was working to create young people who could play an active role in the world, and that Yurika Masuno fit this profile perfectly. With the exchange, she could also act as an intermediary between the Japanese and the Romanian branch. During the exchange, it was decided that Yurika would participate in teaching Japanese at a Romanian school. Initially, it was agreed that she would go to the country together with another colleague, but this other participant withdrew from the program, causing Yurika to be sent alone. Yurika arrived in Romania on the night of August 15, 2012, landing at Henry Coanda Otopeni Airport in Bucharest. From the airport, she would have to travel by train for a few hours to the city of Craiova, where she would stay and teach. The young woman, however, felt lost and not knowing very well what to do, since the last night bus that passed from the airport to the train station had already left. It is said that the young woman wandered around the airport until she was seen no more. As Yurika didn't reach her destination and also didn't get in touch with her relatives, the Romanian authorities were informed of the young woman's disappearance. The police quickly mobilized agents to search the vicinity of the airport where Yurika was last seen. On August 17, 2012, 2 days after the disappearance, the body of Yurika Masuno was found in a forest a few kilometers from the airport where she was last seen. The body was covered with leaves and showed severe signs of violence. The police did a big sweep of the entire place, and about 70 meters from where Yurika was found, the officers found a suitcase with her belongings. Yurika's body was sent for expertise, and according to report, the young woman resisted the attack as best she could, trying to get rid of the aggressor in every way, but she was not able to stop his strength. Still, according to the report, the man who attacked her was very strong and probably quite large. What used to be a disappearance turned out to be a much more serious crime, and the police began to be pressured by population to carry out a thorough investigation and bring the person responsible to justice as quickly as possible. During investigations, the police checked all security camera footage from the airport, starting the moment Yurika landed. In these images, they could see the young woman walking back and forth, as if she didn't know exactly where she was going. Afterwards, it is possible to see her being approached by a man still inside the airport, around 8:30 p.m. at night. They talk for a few minutes and leave the place together. The two go to a taxi, enter the vehicle, and follow an unknown direction. Through these images, the officers were able to identify the man who approached and left with Yurika from the airport that night. His name is Vlad Nicolai, a 26-year-old Romanian of Roma origin at the time of the events. On August 19, 2012, 4 days after the crime, the police arrested Vlad, who offered no resistance. Although investigations were still ongoing, the man was already seen as the main suspect for the crime, as he was certainly one of the last people to have contact with Yurika. During his interrogation, Vlad was questioned by the police about the young woman. He said he actually approached her at the airport and offered to help her, saying he was a tourist guide of sorts. After that, the man said he took Yurika to the taxi, and the taxi driver dropped them off near the hotel where she would be staying. He also said that the young woman wanted to pay him, but he didn't accept it, because he just wanted to help her, saying goodbye to her in the wake and leaving. Vlad denied throughout his interrogation that he had done anything to the young woman. However, the evidence that would later be found in the course of investigations showed the opposite. After a search at Vlad's house, the police found some of Yurika's belongings that were missing from her suitcase, including her cell phone. In addition, his DNA was also found on the victim's body. With all this evidence, there was no point in Vlad denying it. The authorities already knew he was responsible for the crime. The case gained so much repercussion in Romania that the investigation was taken over by the country's Supreme Court investigation team, which only investigates cases considered special. Before we go any further, I'll talk a little bit about Vlad Nicolai and his other crimes that the police uncovered in the course of investigations. Vlad Nicolai is a man of Gypsy origin, and he was 26 years old at the time of the events, as I already mentioned. He was known among friends as Commissaro, and was a member of a gang organization that operated by robbing non-English speaking tourists, posing as taxi drivers at airport stops. During investigations into the crime against Yurika, detectives discovered that Vlad was also likely responsible for taking the lives of 2 other women, in addition to other crimes against several people. According to the police, the man began committing his crimes in May 2010, moving between the cities of Balotesti and Bucharest to look for his victims. As a highlight were the crimes committed in February 2011, in which he committed a robbery and attempted abuse. A year later, in March 2012, the man assaulted an 85-year-old woman. In March of the same year, he stole, abused, and took the life of an 86-year-old woman, and on August 6, he again stole, abused, and took the life of a 74-year-old woman, the latter being just days before the crime against Yurika. Until then, Vlad Nicolai focus seemed to be only on elderly women, perhaps because of their fragility. One of his victims, an 85-year-old woman, was attacked by the man on March 2, 2012, and died on April 14 in a local hospital. She still had time to give a statement and point out the criminal's characteristics to the police. The elderly woman suffered numerous serious injuries, and in her expert report, it is said that she died due to the amount and severity of the injuries added to her advanced age. After collecting evidence of all these crimes, the responsible prosecutors found that there were strong indications that Vlad was indeed responsible for all of them. Considering the number of victims, the prosecutors asked that the charge to be changed from a qualified crime to a qualified and serious one, thus leading to an increase in the sentence. The police also identified the man's DNA on the clothes of the elderly women attacked, which was more than enough proof that he was, in fact, involved in these crimes. After the revelation of all these crimes committed, Vlad Nicolai was compared to Ion Rimaru, a famous serial criminal from Romania who was active in the 70s. During the time he was in police custody, Vlad underwent psychiatric examination. According to the report, The man had complete discernment when he committed the crimes against the three women, as well as in the other crimes of which he was also accused. This report would be used by prosecution as a counter-argument if the man's defense alleged insanity. Vlad's trial began on November 8, 2012, at the Court of Appeals in Bucharest and took place in record time for the country's standards. In court, the prosecution identified the case as a premeditated crime, arguing that the man approached the student already with clear intentions of doing what he did. The taxi driver responsible for taking the criminal and the victim that day was a witness of great importance. According to him, Vlad went to his car accompanied by an Asian girl and asked for a ride. The taxi driver then got out of the vehicle and helped them with their luggage by placing it in the trunk. In the sequence, Vlad and Yurika got into the car. Vlad then told the taxi driver that he was supposed to leave them on the banks of a highway that was a few kilometers away, a highway that was the opposite of the path that Yurika should take, and that also it was surrounded by a dense forest. The taxi driver answered the request and didn't find anything strange, even more so because Yurika seemed to agree with everything Vlad said, since in her head, Vlad just wanted to help her. When they arrived on the highway, the taxi driver helped them by taking Yurika's luggage from the trunk. He was paid and then left the place. After that, Vlad and Yurika walked for a few meters, and when Vlad realized there was no one nearby, he grabbed the young woman and took her into the middle of the forest. Then Vlad did terrible things to Yurika. As soon as it was over, the criminal opened Yurika's suitcase and stole a cell phone, a camera, a notebook, and the money she was carrying. He discarded what was left of the luggage in the forest and returned home. A few days later, the taxi driver saw on TV that the young woman he had transported had been the victim of a crime and immediately went to the police. Vlad Nikolai was found guilty of all charges he had against him. Initially, he was sentenced to 208 years in prison, but later the judge said that it would be easier to sentence him to life imprisonment at once. Experts who followed the case said that Vlad Nikolai would certainly have been sentenced to death penalty if he had not been abolished in the country in 1990. In addition to life imprisonment, Vlad was also ordered to pay damages of 100,000 euros to Yurika's parents, in addition to 600,000 euros to relatives of other women he attacked. Later, an officer of the judicial police in the city of Otopeni was arrested accused of having favored Vlad during the investigations. This officer's name is Jike Stefaneschi, and he was tried and sentenced to 4 years in prison. The crime, as I already said, was one of the most repercussions in all Romania, and even in other European countries. He also had a great impact on the country and the public opinion, which sharply criticized the authorities and the media alike. These criticisms of the authorities were not only due to the fact that the police officer was arrested accused of favoring the criminal, but also because it was later discovered that one of Vlad's first victims of forced intercourse made a complaint to the police, but the police didn't proceed with the investigation. At the time, there was more than enough evidence for the man to be arrested. However, the authorities showed no interest in the case, and Vlad remained at large to commit more crimes. For some critics, this behavior is all too common in Romania's police, who don't care enough about local crimes, and it takes a case to get a certain amount of publicity for them to do something about it. Romania is one of the least safe countries in Europe, especially for women who are preferred targets of criminals. Crime against tourists is also a big problem in the country, which has numerous gangs whose main activity is to rob tourists. The population also criticized the media a lot, due to the sensationalist and unscrupulous coverage of the case. Some newspapers even wrote articles blaming the victim for what happened. In one of these articles, it was said that Yurika was trying really hard to learn other languages, but she lacked common sense, suggesting that what happened was kind of her fault. Already in a radio program, an announcer said that she didn't understand how someone could have taken a taxi with a complete stranger, and that the young woman should have gone directly to her destination and never accepted Vlad's help. The woman ended up by saying that Yurika had been stupid and that this case should serve as an example so that it would not happen again. On the other hand, sectors of the Japanese media when seeing these statements, didn't let it go and countered the criticism. According to them, Yurika was not at fault, since the young woman was from a country where peace and security are guaranteed, and therefore, she believed that Vlad was in fact someone who only wanted to help her. They also said that the main culprit for the crime is the criminal who made the decision to commit it, and in the background the authorities who failed to arrest him when there was enough evidence that he was someone dangerous. For Romanians, some press vehicles in their country were more concerned with the audience than with the victim. In addition to the criticism from the authorities and the media in the country where the crime took place, the student organization was also severely criticized by some people. According to these people, the organization should have sent someone to the airport to receive Yurika, since they knew that it was the young woman's first time in the country and that therefore she would have difficulties to reach her hotel. I couldn't find statements from Yurika's parents after the crime. The only thing I could find was about the Japanese media rebuting the criticisms about the young woman I mentioned earlier. Yurika was veiled and then cremated in a ceremony attended by family and friends in Japan. This was the case of Yurika Masuno, a young student whose life was taken in what was supposed to be a great life and career experience, in a crime resulting from a failure in the security of a country. Alright folks, so that's it for today. Thanks for watching until the end. Best wishes, and I see you next time.